quick thank you to all of my Patreons, and a special shout out to Lemu, Firebringer Axel, Enigma Desu, and Ryder Nia for pledging the higher tiers. Your support is heavily appreciated. Rewrite is a visual novel I've gone back and forth on. I went in with large yet tempered expectations since a lot of people praised this visual novel as one of the best things that Key's ever made, but I also knew that in the Key community itself it was very hit and miss, and overall I'd have to say I'm a bit more in the latter audience. It doesn't help that I watched the very controversial anime and unironically thought a lot of the ideas that show brought to the table in its original route were ideas that I preferred over what they did in the visual novel. I feel like, with how much I praised the Rewrite anime over the visual novel, and because I've openly stated what aspects of Rewrite's visual novel let me down, a lot of people have found the conception that I hate the visual novel, and that's just not true. There are parts I dislike a lot, sure, but I could also say that with Tsukihime. I could also say that about Clannad. I could go on. There are very few stories that, to me, had next to no flaws, or at least very negligible ones. Every story has its bad points, and also its good points. And Rewrite is no exception for me. I can especially talk about one of them to massive length. That would be the main heroine. So, to give back to the Rewrite visual novel fans that I've undoubtedly made mad at this point, this is my video on my favorite part of the Rewrite visual novel. Let's talk about Kagari. To begin this video, I will have to say that this video will of course contain spoilers for Rewrite, as Kagari's very existence could be considered one, let alone talking about her character in detail and her impact on me. Got that? Alright. Kagari from the very beginning was a character that interested me. The mystery to her existence is literally what drives the plot forward from the get-go, yet, in the character roots, she doesn't really do much. Heck, she's literally a walking plot device. She is a liability that most people risk their lives over and fight for. She gets shot, she disappears, she gets used to destroy the world, and ultimately does nothing for the plot itself, outside of being a glorified MacGuffin. However, that changes once you get to the true roots of Rewrite. Specifically, Moon. Not that Moon. In the Moon route, you as Kotaro meet Kagari on a flowery field in a world with no people other than you and her. Being so, you try to interact with her, only to be quickly killed off. Not the best first interaction, but an important one. Despite attempting multiple times again and again, Kotaro can never really seem to get her attention, only to get killed off one more time. And Kagari straight up does not understand what he's doing, and the reason is simple. The key is not human. That's what they said in the game, right? Heck, they don't even refer to her as a girl or even a name. Characters have almost always called her It, and It is not human. It is the key. In the character roots, she shows no traits of humanity. And here in the Moon route, for some peculiar reason, when she talks, all people can hear is a loud buzzing noise. Meaning, simple communication was just simply incompatible. People can't even understand the key, let alone communicate with it. Kotaro does manage to somehow get the key's name, Kagari, and finds the exact distance away from her that allows him to admire her, yet not be close enough to make her want to kill him. And well, he stayed like that for a very long time. That was the most he could do in a world with nobody else. They were both alone, and they both had nothing else to do. And he couldn't do much more, as Kotaro, a human, cannot interact with Kagari, who wasn't one. There was just no way for it to happen. Right? Kotaro eventually brews coffee and suggests Kagari to have a refreshment. Kagari notices and walks up to him. She takes the cup of coffee, drinks it, and spits it out. But eventually, she hands the cup back to him and requests for more. 3 cups of coffee. That was all that Kotaro needed for Kagari to accept an interaction between the two. That interaction made a bond. A bond between 2 individuals. A bond between one that is human and one that is not. A bond between 2 existences that should not be able to interact. This mere interaction linked these 2 lives together that would usually never be. And isn't that something amazing? But on the contrary, isn't that something almost all humans do with each other? We never truly do understand each other, do we? But these connections we form, they're what make these bonds, right? Human to human, individual to individual, Kotoro to Kagari. That's how all interactions work. And yet, despite everything pointing to the fact that Kotaro and Kagari can't interact properly, they still form that bond. They may not be able to communicate through words, but they don't need to. Simple actions, they build trust. Kagari herself has a simple yet innocent relationship with Kotaro. We can tell that her care for Kotaro is mutual, as it's her who actively decides to bring Kotaro into her life and accept him. Kagari trusts Kotaro enough to let him enter her territory, to look at her work that most humans should not be able to comprehend. Even when Kotaro makes mistakes, Kagari supports him and watches him to the best of her ability. Even when he hurts her, she is willing to forgive him and trust him again right afterwards. All of these kinds of interactions between characters that can't talk with each other, that aren't supposed to understand each other, all because of one little interaction. A real genuine bond was made. This is no impulse. This is no programming. Kagari legitimately cared for Kotaro, for no reason other than the fact that they recognized each other with that mutual bond. And it was a bond that Kotaro himself felt was worth his entire life. Kagari's interactions really brings up the thought of how other human interactions really work, and to me, it makes me think about how they spawn from little things and how even small threads can lead to relationships that create people's existences themselves. Kagari shows that even a small interaction means so much for an individual, and people just genuinely can't be human without it. Kagari might not have been human, but we can still understand her if we try. We can understand other life if we try, just by simply interacting. And hopefully, with other little coincidences and luck, we can understand them. We can understand her. We can understand other life, as we can with any other human. It's one of the most unique ways of presenting a character forming a bond with another that I've ever seen in fiction. And yet the origin to their interactions don't change from something like a simple conversation about similar interests, or a chance meeting. It's so interesting, and that aspect of her instantly grabbed me. The way the moon route breaks down how any normal interaction works and executes it in a unique way, which makes Kagari's interactions feel extremely fresh, yet just as convincing as any good relationship building you'd see in normal fiction. And yet, it doesn't even stop there. Kagari's work is related to a theory on life, and she's been constantly spending her time trying to solve a riddle, to make life on Earth survive. As we've seen in Rewrite's character roots, there are so many timelines, but all of them will eventually lead to ruin one way or another, either by the hands of Earth itself or by the hands of humanity. Kagari, all on her own, works hard every second to find a way for both to coexist, but she still struggles. It's only when Kotaro puts in a little dumb message, "I want to see you again someday," where Kagari is able to form a brand new theory and succeeds in her research. And once the research was done, humanity has to depart. The reason, it's in the namesake of the route. All this time we were never on Earth, as Earth had been destroyed multiple times. We were always on the moon. In this route, Kagari was using Earth's aurora to replicate it on the moon to try and find a working formula for life. It's because of that we got existences like Kotaro, and how he has all possible memories of himself. Every single planet or celestial body has their own key, their very own Kagari. The Kagari we had interacted with was not the one we'd seen until now, but a stranger, the Kagari from the moon. That Kagari had been left alone for her entire existence, as unlike the Earth, the moon never made life. The Kagari we knew had existed alone, and only during her research to finding a way to save the Earth did she find a friend, Kotaro, and you, who sees the story through his eyes. A unique kinship born from two individuals that were never meant to interact. For the first time, Kagari was not alone. And now, she sends him off by her own will, so that he and the rest of humanity can live a happy life on Earth and find a timeline with hope. Kagari did all of this with no reward. She had no responsibility to help life on Earth, yet she did anyways. Her meeting Kotaro was a happy coincidence, but at the same time, for the first time, she was able to meet someone, and now she was going to let him go. She was going to let everyone on Earth go. But why? Without anyone, the moon would return to a barren wasteland. Kagari would have to spend eternity with nobody, not a single soul to interact with. Yet she still did it. The reason is simple. Earlier in the route, when Kotaro explores the secrets to existence, he finds a concept far higher than he ever assumed that it would be. Beyond the atoms, the chemical formulas, the laws of physics, reality, and time, he found the concept of love, all the way near the top. And it was because of this emotion that Kagari let everyone go. It's a sad decision. She's condemning herself to silence and loneliness right after finally having life, finally having someone else by her side. By any logical decision, nobody would do that. Everyone wants to be with someone. Everyone needs some bond so they won't feel alone. But Kagari loved humanity. Kagari loved the earth. Even though she's not a part of it, she'll give everything she has for us. Bon voyage, humanity. She sent us off because she loves us all. Through the character roots and rewrites, I never ended up sympathizing or caring for a majority of the characters, with only a few exceptions like Lucia, but Kagari's character really hit home. This girl worked hard for our happiness, and willingly sacrificed everything she had once her job was done. A girl that had been lonely for eternity, and will be lonely again. All for us. And for what reason? Because she loved us. That hit me. It hit me really hard. Overall, I can say Kagari was a character I really enjoyed my time with. And easily, she's my favorite of the story. It's interesting to think about how life interacts with each other, and also our own interactions as humans. But more importantly, she really hit a nail that a lot of other characters in the story just hadn't done for me. She was charming, she was cute, but more importantly, she had a strong story. And even since I continued into the Terra route, I never really felt this way about Rewrite ever again. Sure, we can bring up Kagari in the Terra route, and how her development there could be a result of her increase in humanity, and learning about how humans interact and how they contrast with the logical aspects, but more importantly, I wanted to bring focus on Moon Kagari because that's the Kagari that struck a chord with me. That's the Kagari I felt for. And that's the Kagari that made Rewrite for me. A character that made me think, and she also made me feel. In a story that I was initially quite lukewarm on, Kagari and the Moon Route really changed my opinion on Rewrite for the better, and to this day, it's one of my favorite key heroines for how unique she is. Tackling the topic of human interactions and emotions in a way that makes you think, but also makes you appreciate it all. That's why I love Kagari so much. And to finish this video, I know I said I would focus on the visual novel, but I also have to mention this one last thing I loved about the anime. So, the visual novel ended quite vaguely, but that anime ending? Damn, that scene made me a happy boy.